Okay, before we start, I have a few safeguarding announcements. Firstly, the session is designed to be informational and respectful, so please be mindful of the language you use and avoid sharing personal or sensitive details about yourself or others. No private contact will take place between organizers and participants outside of the session. If you need to ask a question or raise a concern, please email or put it on the WhatsApp group. This session is not medical or career advice. Any information shared is general and for educational discussion only. For personal advice, please speak to a qualified professional. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, you're free to step away and you can let me know or any supervising adult you're with. And by staying in this session, you agree to follow these guidelines and treat everyone with respect. And this session will be recorded for safeguarding, quality, and entertainment purposes. The session is supported by supervising adults and safeguarding procedures are in place. Okay, so our topic for today is should organ donation be made compulsory after death? And I'll just do a quick presentation to talk about it a bit and then lay the ground open for any discussion and debate to take place. Okay, so we're going to link this topic to the four medical principles, and that's autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. And we're going to analyze whether organ donation, for and against, how it influences all these pillars that we align by in the medical field. And if we're talking about autonomy, we're thinking, are we forcing individuals to make decisions against Forcing individuals to make decisions is against autonomy, as this will decrease the rapport between doctors and patients. In terms of beneficence, we're talking about the clear divide between beneficence for individuals whose organs are being taken away and the person who will be benefiting from this. It is in the best interest of other patients when we use this organ to save lives, but is it in the best interest of the dead donor? Should we not care about them because they are dead? Non-maleficence, if we force donation, are we harming the families of the ones affected, therefore doing harm to patients? Or will we be harming the lives of other patients if we do not do this? And in terms of justice, will we be justifying the laws of justice by making sure treatment is equitable by allowing individuals to have the organs they need? Or will we be going against justice when we don't allow these individuals to make a choice of their own? So if anyone has any points to make regarding these four medical pillars, they're free to unmute and make a point for or against regarding any of the points. Okay, I can start for a bit. For four, I can say for like a beneficence, that's doing good. Thousands of patients can die each year waiting for organ transplants, and after death, organs that could save lives are often buried or cremated. Making donation compulsory maximizes overall good for society. One deceased donor can save or improve multiple lives. So this is like a strong utilitarian argument saying that the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Would anyone like to like counter that or like build on it? Yes, you can unmute if you do.
I think that you have to think about also individual autonomy,
Right.
because making the organ donation mandatory means that it's no longer that person's choice.
Okay. But this is after they died though, and then the organs can be used to save like more lives and for more people. Or Ibrahim can talk while like never fixes
Um,
what's going on.
there may be like religious or ethical like reasons for not wanting to be an organ donor, and as
Yeah.
such, if you enforce that and make it a an opt-out system, then it can reduce the autonomy patients have, and therefore it's kind of an infringement of their own personal beliefs and autonomy to have those beliefs. But also, it might be particularly distressing for families of the patients. For example, if they are told that their relative didn't have the opportunity to opt out, and now they need to follow through with the legal process to ensure that it can be particularly distressing, especially after the grief of already losing a relative.
Yeah, but there's also been like a survey that shows that they are not aware of this opt-in opt-out system, which is why they're not being willing to donate. So making that opt-out system makes more people aware of it so that then they're able to make that decision whether they're interested in donating or not.
But then you
Okay.
could argue that the increase in numbers for the opt-out system is only those who weren't able to opt out. There might be limits on the education that they receive about the system.
Right. Okay. Would anyone like to counter that point or add to it? Okay. We could also discuss the opt-out system like we started, saying the current system is based on an opt-out version. You can only opt out of organ donation. Is this secretly evicting our autonomy? What if individuals do not know they can opt out? And this is something we've just spoken about some people not being knowledgeable, like they're not knowing this information, so they are not able to opt out even when it's a choice. And linking back to the four pillars of medical ethics, I just thought I would touch on each of them for and against to maybe give some people some ideas so they can like talk about it. So for four, I've spoken a bit about beneficence, so I'll talk about justice. Um, I think this justice favors like people that are informed, educated, or proactive, and mandatory donation creates a fairer system where everyone contributes. It reduces inequality in access to life-saving organs, and healthcare resources are shared, so organs should be too. And so it's like the ethical angle of it shows that fair distribution of scarce medical resources. And for non-maleficence, it says the donor is deceased, so no physical harm is caused. Proper medical criteria already exist to confirm death, that's like brain death, and failure to use viable organs arguably causes avoidable harm to patients who die waiting. So the ethical angle of this is like harm is prevented rather than it being caused. And for autonomy, which is the most important, but after death, personal interests no longer exist in the same way. So society already limits autonomy after death, e.g. post-mortems or burial laws. Autonomy could still be respected via religious or medical exemptions. And the ethical angle is that individual autonomy may be outweighed by collective benefit. And if we're speaking against emotion, like it should not be made compulsory. In also autonomy, we can say respect for bodily autonomy does not end at death, and that people have moral, cultural, and religious beliefs about their bodies. Compulsory donation removes genuine choice. So this violates autonomy and undermines trust in medicine. For non-maleficence, linking to what he said, psychological and social harm, families may experience distress knowing organs are taken without consent, and it could damage public trust in healthcare systems. And fear of exploitation may reduce engagement with healthcare. So this just shows that harm can not only be physical, but it could also be emotional and societal. And in terms of justice, minority groups may feel like targeted or ignored, and communities with historical mistrust of healthcare may be further alienated. And who decides these exemptions, and are they applied fairly? So these are things that we're going to think about. And it's also thinking about that if we have like a one size fits all policy, it may just end up being unjust, so would not work well in organ donations. And for beneficence, consent improves outcomes. So voluntary systems with education already increases donation. And then trust and transparency may save more lives long term than force. Ethical medicine relies on consent, not coercion. So it's talking about how doing good must be done ethically and not just efficiently. So would anyone like to expatiate on any of these points or like bring new ones? Alright.
Just expanding on like the emotional toil that an opt-out system can bring, um, it may be seen that it may be viewed that the healthcare system is favoring the patient's organs for use for other patients over the actual patient themselves. So there may be a conflict of interest, especially if organ donors are needed. Um, it may lead to people on life support machines. It may lead to like changes in how they are dealt with. For example, there may be a greater push to remove life support so that organs could be used to support other patients. So conflicts of interest can bring about an unfair system.
Yeah. Yes, sorry, you can talk.
To add to that, also within time, like there could be the development of more unethical practices. So there could be people being prematurely declared as dead, or doctors not putting their full energy into reviving a person after they're dead, like for example, resuscitating them.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Yes. Another point we could make is that where those organs actually end up once they've been taken. So, for example, instead of some of the organs from that dead person being used to, say, save another patient in a critical condition, it could be used for something like, let's say, medical student research, like just
Yeah.
medical students using those organs to actually, further their own studies instead. And that is also something which, linking back to the family aspect, if the family thinks that donating their deceased one's organs would be beneficiary to a faceless someone else, then it would sort of be an injustice in that case as well.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to say to join that or dispute it? If not, we'll. So there's a legal case that happened around 1978, and it is the McFall versus Shim case. So Robert McFall needed bone marrow to survive, but his cousin refused to donate. And the court ruled that you cannot force someone's body to be used to help another, despite the potential to save a life. And when this occurred, even though it was morally wrong to deny someone that, the court did not find it illegal in any way, because at the end of the day, um, the guy had that autonomy to decide whether he wanted to give his bone marrow for this donation, and he decided he did not want to. And this led to it being a court case, and the judge like made this decision of it not being like a forced thing. So this also reinforces how we look at it in the sense of like legally, and how organ donation should not be compulsory or is not forced in like a legal sense. Okay, so a reason why we're doing this debate is because of the organ shortage crisis. Individuals die every year waiting for transplant. Often relies on awareness and motivation. Families refusing even when donation is possible, and organs are wasted after death. And so people think about cremation, that does cremation waste organs that could be potentially used? Millions die every day waiting for organs. Is it right to burn the chances of someone else's survival? So what are our thoughts on like cremation and the whole idea of it? And do we think there's any way we could find like a balance between these things? Okay. It is possible to go back to an opt-in system, but raise awareness about this. The reason opt-in version fails is due to the lack of awareness. And if we show people why donation is important and show them the benefits, do you think this would be a better way to improve their interests? Yes, you can talk.
I think that the opt-in system is currently the most efficient organ donation system that we have. Like, for example, in Spain and Austria, both of those countries are leading in organ donation numbers worldwide. So
Yeah.
it's not a system that has as many problems ethically as a mandatory organ donation system.
Yes, but when England had an opt-in system, and this is like pre-2020, research shows that actually 80% of people supported organ donation, but only 38% had opted in. So this did not translate into the high number of like potential donors, and which could also align with them being unaware of it, like not having the knowledge and not the awareness not being there enough for people to know that this is an option for them to do. Yes, Radif, and then sorry.
I think there's also an argument to be made for the ratio of living donors to dead donors in those in for the statistics in the opt-out system.
Yeah. Could
So
you expatiate on that a bit?
yeah, so for example, in an opt-in system, the individual who could donate their organs would have to actively consent to have their organs donated. In which case, let's say, what living donor, ratio between living donors and dead donors would be much more even though the total number of the donors would be much lower than the opt-out system. But with the opt-out system, you would possibly see that the number of dead donors is much higher than the number of living donors.
Yeah. Sarah, what do you want to say?
This is relating back to the point about the public awareness. I think if the problem is about public awareness, then there can be campaigns and incentives for voluntary donations that could be made rather than jumping to mandatory organ donation.
Okay. So just like letting us know a bit about what organ donation is like in the UK. So in 2015, Wales became the first UK nation to move soft to a soft opt-out system of consent for organ donation. And the reason why this is determined as soft is because the families had the final say in that matter. And right now, Wales has the highest consent rate of all UK nations. And presently, it's like 77% compared to when it was 58%. And that kind of shows that actually maybe this opt out system actually works in some places. And also, is the fact that it is soft, is that helping people's view on it and making them feel like they have more control over it. So and then England also decided to adopt that opt-out system where people over 18 are automatically added to the organ donor register and they have to actively withdraw if they want to opt out of it. But then families are still consulted before any organ donation takes place here in England. And Scotland also introduced a similar system, but Northern Ireland still has an opt-in system, but steps are being made to change to an opt-out system. So from what happened in Wales, we can kind of see that okay, maybe finding a balance between it being an opt-in and an opt-out system makes people feel like they have more control and then helps increase the number of like organ donations and things like that without making it compulsory after death. Does anyone have anything to like add to that or anything against it? Okay, just talking about the opt-in and opt-out system again, I also think that maybe it's not like conclusive in a sense because this is just this is just the UK we're talking about, and um, maybe it's not like that much effective on a global scale, and maybe some countries or some parts of the world would not benefit from those systems more than the other. Um, does anyone have anything to say about that? Yes, you can speak.
I just wanted to say, tying into what you said about like they could ask the family members if they still agree for their organs to be donated. But then what about cases like from accidents or cases where there's no family member around to either consent to them donating their organs, but then if they were alive, they wouldn't want their organs to be donated, but they just don't have enough information about like the opt-out system.
And I think that's where like the gray part of all this comes into play because there's not like a one size fit all kind of policy that just addresses everything. There's always going to be like some parts that are gonna like um benefit more and lose more from it. And I think that's an aspect that would have to be considered like really if that were to happen. And I guess in that case they would still try to like I guess call like any relations or family members of that person, but in a situation where they can't reach, I assume they'll go ahead with it because of, well, if it is a soft opt-out system, I don't think they would, but if it's like hard opt-out, I guess they would. Does anyone else have anything to say concerning that? Or also, do we think like putting incentives in the systems are going to make it better? Like having an opt-in or opt-out system, but like people who are in the system, they have priority if they ever need like organ donations or if they ever need transplant. Because this is something Israel does, and they provide that incentive for people. Yes, you can talk, Ibrahim.
I think if we introduce incentives for organ donation, it kind of creates a two-tier system of healthcare, because obviously people come in all sorts of different circumstances, but improving their care for it would also it'd be kind of like making a judgment on them on and their healthcare, which I think wouldn't be just.
Yeah. So I guess that like if the opt-out system wants to be made like balanced, ensure that it's gonna work here in England, a lot of money has to be invested in education and training so that it can like be a success and people can be aware. If they're not interested, then they can opt out of it, then and allowing them to still have full autonomy over their life and their choices. Um, does anyone have anything to say or any new points to address? Yes, you can talk, people.
Hi, so I joined a bit late, so I don't know if this has been covered already, but
Yeah.
I think that if somebody's like capable, like they're in terms of health, they're capable of donating their organs and they choose to opt out of donating their organs, then to like prevent there being a shortage of organs, you could make it so that they can't accept organs if that makes sense. Like they can't also have an organ transplant if they're not willing to give up their own organs.
All right. Okay. Does anyone have anything to counter that point or add to it? Yes, Roger.
I was thinking, sorry, I was thinking that if there was a system where the donor in question or the family members would know like 100% where donated organs would go, or where the donated organs what the donated organs would be used for specifically, then I believe that could be another thing that could what do you call it, make them consider donating their organs instead of
Yeah.
not.
Yes, sir.
But this system could also create discrimination against people that would go against that person or that family's personal beliefs. For example, if there was a person that wouldn't want to give their organs to smokers, even though, for example, a smoker might be more in need of certain organs, then it could negatively impact people.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. Anyone else have anything to say? Yes, Tatenda.
Sorry, going back to the idea of introducing incentives, I think that this, like, for example, financial incentives would sort of exploit vulnerable people. So, like, for example, it may pressure low income individuals to sort of opt in, even though they don't agree to organ donation ethically or religiously, but because they need the money or their families need the money. And this can sort of turn organ donation from a gift into a transaction, which raises
Yeah.
ethical concerns. And for example, we already have illegal organ markets, which often exploit the poor because they need money. So
introducing incentives as a legal idea would also be some sort of expansion of the illegal organ markets. Even though it's legalized, it would just be the exact same thing, but at a bigger scale. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Ready?
Yes, going back to that point on discrimination against a certain demographic, you could say the same thing that, you know, if a certain family or a certain individual was informed that their organ would be donated to another person, let's say an underage person, a minor, then it might encourage them to actually donate their organ instead of, you know, say they were considering not donating their organ before they were given this information.
Yeah. Can we also look at things through the lens of like how like justice can be put in play and how things like a bias could affect organ donation if it were to like become compulsory, like people like paying their way into things, or people just like how that undermines the justice aspect of the medical pillars. Does anyone have anything to say concerning that? Yes, sir.
If you think about it from the other perspective for mandatory organ donation, you could say that because the NHS is currently under a lot of financial strain and that prolonged treatments, like for example, dialysis for kidney failure, are very taxing emotionally and financially on patients and their families, that making a mandatory organ donation system would reduce the need for these treatments, and it would help patients, their families, and also the wider NHS, because the allocation of those resources can go elsewhere, to, for example, to emergency care.
Right. Can anyone think of any positive points of organ donation and how that helps, like adding on to what she says, how that helps the NHS as a whole and like societies and people? Yes, Redif.
On that point, of course, due to this organ shortage, there are often times very long waiting lists for, say, people who actually need an organ transplant, which can be very stressful, very you know, emotionally distressing for that person. So in that case, if this organ shortage were to be much more drastically reduced, then of course that they would not have to suffer through as much, and not only that, their risk of dying in that during that waiting period or reaching a critical condition during that waiting period would reduce drastically as well.
Yeah. Isabella?
Following on from that, I just feel that making it compulsory would be like the logical step, and ensuring that there's no life-saving organ is wasted due to inaction and lack of awareness. And obviously religion is a form of that, but once someone is deceased, obviously the family is still aware, but if the person has decided that they want to donate their organs but the family doesn't believe in it, then it's up to the person who's deceased, not the family.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I think, adding on to Isabella's point, at some point of a person's life, maybe there should be something put in place where a person can consider that choice before obviously they die, like in the same way inheritance and wills are.
Yeah. Yes, Isabella? Oh, okay. Can we think of ways that this awareness could be increased, like that people can feel more, I guess they have that, like they feel they have that autonomy to make these decisions. Like how can this awareness be increased? How can we make them more aware and knowledgeable of things like this that are so impacting in the medical field? Yes, really.
I was thinking of something like surveys for from year 13 and above. So, from the age when we started turning teen, like what do you call it? Like, do you wish to be part of this register, or are you aware of this certain fact, and so on and so forth?
Yeah. Does anyone have any other points concerning that? Yes, Favor.
I think it would also be a good idea if, which like with whatever public health campaign we moved forward with, you had personal anecdotes in them as well, so people can see how like donating your organs is beneficial for the public.
Right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
It could also be approached in the same way blood donation is.
Okay. Can you expatiate on that a bit?
For advertising and for the way that a lot of people know that blood donation is beneficial to people, and yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Radif.
I would actually like to go on Favor's point about personal anecdotes. I actually believe it would introduce like some form of bias, especially since the donor is probably not going to know how, when, or where their organs are going to be used. Personal anecdotes might, provide a sort of biased story, a biased in positivity.
Yeah. Tatenda.
I think another way to raise awareness would be to address any myths and fears. For example, the idea that doctors would prioritize retrieving organs from a patient instead of saving them, or the fact that people's religions might not allow them. So this can be done by like involving all community and religious leaders, having them
Yeah.
speak up about situations like this and linking it to different religions. And yeah.
Can we think of like any alternatives to like organ donations, or things that are like for people who are not able to like either accept organ donations, or people that just do not want to be involved with it? Do we think there are like any alternative procedures made available for them in the NHS? Sorry to send it, I can't hear you well.
Sorry, I would say maybe artificial organs, which is currently rising. With technology, at some point we should be able to design certain types of technology equipment that can work as different organs instead to help those people. If that
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to say concerning that? Yes, sir.
I've also heard that there's research into, for example, using animal organs like a pig heart or a cow heart instead of a human one.
Yeah. Okay, so from what we've said so far, we've established that organ donation should not actually be made compulsory after death, because that infringes on patients' right to autonomy and giving them that autonomy to make those decisions based on their healthcare. We've also addressed how actually this opt-out system may not be as beneficial because of the lack of knowledge and the lack of awareness that people have concerning it, and how there are going to be a lot of gray issues surrounding it because of people not being able to opt out, or like people's family opposing whatever their decision was. And we've said that increasing awareness of this, like by either through like community or religious outlets, or making surveys to people who are at that age where they're able to make decisions, and securing their point of view on those matters. And yeah, this is a summary of the things that we've covered. Would anyone like to add any like finishing points or anything else? Okay. So I've put the feedback form in the chat. So if you could please fill it up and tell us what went well, what we could improve, and yeah, and give it a rating out of 5.